Now let's take a look at player 2. We've got player 1 running around, ducking, picking up items, and doing things, but what happens if we bring in a second player? I've got my controller here, and I'm going to try to join in as soon as I can get my mouse over the right spot. There we go. And I've got my character here that can run around and seems to duck quite a bit. So let's run over here, see if I can pick up items. Oh, if I can get past the dog. Okay, I'm going to go this way. The dog is beating me up. So we'll run over here. We'll go. I'm ducking constantly. And I'm going to run over here and pick up a key. And, well, okay, first things first, my character poofed and disappeared. And why did that happen? Well, let's take a look. Let's see if there's a difference between our two players. We've got our new player, our first player here. And our player's all set up with the inventory. It's got the player input. You can pick up items, and this stuff seems to work. And if I look at my other player, oh, you can instantly see that things changed, right? First off, the blaster script is on the player still. And, well, I wasn't able to pick up keys. You saw what happened. So there's definitely a difference here. And the first thing that we're going to notice before I give you any challenges is that our player hasn't had its prefab updated. So we need to hit apply all for our prefab. We'll save the scene. And now if I press play, I expect that our second player, while it will duck constantly, should be able to pick up an item. Let's jump in. There we go. I got an item and I was able to pick up both of those items. I can't switch items because I don't have a binding for my controller, so I'm kind of stuck on this key. I should, however, be able to use the key, but you might have noticed what happened there. My key went kind of wonky and weird as soon as another player touched it, because players just pick up and steal items from each other. So what we're going to do now is fix this issue and the ducking issue. And in fact, to keep it easy, we're going to start with the ducking issue first. We're going to have a little challenge to figure out why duck is a little bit strange with controllers versus with the keyboard, and see if we can come up with a good solution for it. So I've got my player here. Let's just take a look one more time. I can run around, duck down as fast as I want on the keyboard, and I've got my other character here, and every time I try to run off to the side, I end up ducking down. I don't mean to, but if I push upward on my controller, I can kind of run around without ducking. Oh, look at that. He stole my blaster. But if I'm going anywhere to the side, I end up ducking. So here's the challenge. Take a look at our player's movement code, specifically the part around ducking, and see if you can find the cause for why a player would duck almost constantly when they're pressing off to the right. They're trying to run to the left or the right on a controller specifically. Again, you're not going to see this on a keyboard. And then once you've found the problem, see if you can come up with a very simple solution. Maybe a solution that requires one line or less, maybe 2 lines at most, and then continue on and I'll show you the actual problem and my solution for it. All right, so let's press play real quick, and I want to show you the problem one more time along with the solution and the thing that's going on here. So if I join in, I've got my character here. I'm going to run this other player nice and far away for a second. If I run off to the left, you can see when I'm running and I try to just go off in a direction, the second my thumbstick goes down even the tiniest little bit, we start to drop down into a duck motion. And the reason for that is pretty simple. If we look at our player script and we go take a look at our duck code where we do the ducking right here on line 104, all we're doing is checking to see if the vertical value is anything less than 0. So if the controller is just centered and we're not touching it at all, it should be 0, but even then it could be a little slightly beat up controller or something that has just a tiny down value. If that's the case, we're going to end up ducking constantly. So what we want to do instead is add in a tiny bit of a threshold here. In fact, we've got a couple options. We could just add in a value like that it's less than negative 0.5. We could put something like that in, but then what we're going to notice is that there's an instant delay. And the reason for the delay is because of the smoothing that happens. Let's watch. As I press down, oh, well, first I've got to join in. Oh, look at that. My other character's already permaducking. Oh, it's because I didn't put a negative value there. So let's go back into the code. Let's change it so that it is a negative value. There we go. Change that to a negative 0.5. Save. We'll go back in. And now it shouldn't auto duck. But we should see that it's instead ducks at a much more delayed rate. Let's press play. And first thing I'm going to do is push down on my controller. Oh, well, first I've got to join in. I push down on the controller and I can see my character ducks somewhat fast, but there is definitely some animation playing before he ducks. My keyboard controller can still duck instantly. So I don't want to use this value. I don't want to make sure that I'm pushing down all the way and that it's actually registered the full downward value. Instead, what I'd like to do is just make it so that if I'm running to the left and the right, if my downward value is anything stronger than my left and right value, so if I'm pushing any more to the right and the left than down, then I'll run that direction. Otherwise, I'll duck. So that way I can kind of run along and just slide down and I'll duck pretty easily and not accidentally get a duck in there. So to do that, we'll open up our player script one more time. And instead of checking to see if the vertical is less than 0.5, we'll check to see if it's less than 0 and that our math.absolute, so we'll use mathf.absolute ABS of our vertical input is also greater than the mathf.absolute value of our horizontal input, so that we're pushing more to the left or the right than we are downward. This is going to be true for left and right because we're using the absolute values, and because they're negative, it's just remember this is going to get flipped, so this will be a positive whatever value we're pressing down, and then this will be how much to the left or right we're pressing in a positive value as well. So we'll save that off, jump back into Unity, and then we should expect to see nice clean ducking behavior that we can also kind of roll our controller down to duck with. Let's press play and see if that's the case. Well, I got to press play and join in, and I run over here. Let's get this character out of the way so he doesn't steal my items yet. I run over and I can duck pretty consistently. I'm not accidentally ducking anymore when I go left and right, and when I want to duck, I can do it pretty much on demand, and it's working fine with no delay. So let's stop playing, go into plastic, so that we fixed the duck. Well, actually, let's make sure that we've saved our project. Looks like we have, though, because the player prefab's there. So fixed duck on controller-based players. And we'll check that in.